Leaders' questions, and I call on Deputy Micheal Martin, who has 3 minutes. Deputy Martin.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Further revelations continue to emerge and discussion concerning the treatment of women whose smear tests by cervical check were wrong and their treatment at the hands of our health services and legal system. We now know that 3 women at the centre of 10 outstanding legal cases against the state over incorrect smear tests have died. The State Claims Agency apparently was told by Cervical Check during the Vicky Fáil case that the women had been told. We now know, of course, that they hadn't. In the forthcoming cases, Taoiseach, and this came across yesterday in a fairly frank exchange at the Finance Committee between the Director General and others, that the State may not have a liability, as the US companies, in fact, may have the liability. And that, therefore, in such cases, it seems to me no guarantees as of yet can be given to the women concerned that they will not have to go through the same treatment as Vicky Fáil. Has the Government and the Taoiseach considered this issue, and could the Taoiseach indicate what steps he and the Government intend to take to prevent further trauma to women in such cases? And bearing in mind that the Director General of the agency said that where the state would have liability, they would deal with it differently. But of course we know that in many instances here we're talking about cases with the actual screening companies. And furthermore, at yesterday's Finance Committee, the Director General, in response to questions from Deputy Mark McSherry and others, did indicate that if Section 32B of the Legal Services Act had been commenced, then the approach adopted by the State Claims Agency could have been different. And this section relates to pre-action protocols designed to secure early resolution in clinical negligence claims in the hope of reducing the number of such cases, ensuring disclosure of all medical and other records. So, Taoiseach, can you explain to me why Section 32B of the Legal Services Act was not commenced by Minister Flanagan? Because it was, I understand, signed into law towards the end of 2015. The State Claims Agency and other agencies and civil service, they get attacked all the time in the immediate aftermath of a crisis. But if an act isn't commenced, or sections of an act isn't commenced, then we can hardly blame officials in state agencies if certain options aren't open to them, options that were intended to be given to them by the Oireachtas. And so were there any consultations between Health and Justice in relation to that issue? Thirdly, Taoiseach, you did reference yesterday in the Dáil that there were about 1,600 cases. These are the 1,600 cases announced by Minister Harris last Tuesday night that had been notified to the National Cancer Registry of Ireland but had not been notified onto Cervical Check. Now, you indicated yesterday, Taoiseach, that the vast majority of those 1,600 cases will not need to be part of the audit because you gave reasons for that. Can you categorically state, Taoiseach, that there are no issues relating to those 1,600 cases, and that Deputy Alan Kelly made a number of observations last evening in the Dáil in terms of the level of knowledge of the Department of Health about issues between the Cancer Registry and the Cervical Check programme in terms of data interchange and all of that? Now, I would ask if the Taoiseach and the Minister are aware of such issues. Was the Department aware of such issues down through the years? And if you could clarify that matter for me.
Taoiseach, these are new laws.
They're not. It's December 2015. You see, we can keep announcing laws in here. We can keep passing laws and acts and saying we're going to do great things next month. We're going to do great things the month after. We'll pass them. And they never get commenced. And nothing changes. And I think we need a satisfactory explanation as to why that Act, that Section 32B of that Act, which was designed to help prevent the kind of trauma that people have experienced taking on the state, it never gets commenced. And I think we need a very satisfactory explanation of that. You just references at the end of your long reply there. Secondly, Taoiseach, you need to clarify very specifically in terms of, you've asked the Attorney General to talk to the State Claims Agency. Now, the State Claims Agency said yesterday that basically if cases involving the state where the state had liability, they would prevent any trauma. But I'm talking about the other cases, the majority of cases, which could be against the US companies involved. How do you propose to prevent trauma in those situations? Has the government considered that point? That's what I asked originally. And can you give me a specific answer to that? Have you considered it at all? And thirdly, could you respond to the third question I asked in relation to the level of knowledge within the Department of Health pertaining to issues potentially between the cancer registry and the cervical check programme and reconciliation of their respective numbers in terms of people who have died from cancer?
There is